They say that when the largest dam in the world was completed, there were engineers who gave their entire lives to a river they would never see flow freely again. It was not a curse. It was a trade. And over the past century, humanity has repeated that same trade again and again. In steel, in concrete, in glass, and in millions of nameless hours of labour. We dam rivers. We bridge straits. We raise towers that pierce the clouds and send a living station into orbit where there is no gravity to hold anything down. Some structures were born from fear, to stop the sea from swallowing a nation. Some were born from ambition, for one city to rise above all others. Some were born from faith, the belief that the future deserves a home. And some simply were born because humans refuse to accept that something is impossible. This is not just a list of wonders. It is proof that humanity, however small, against this planet, has never stopped trying to leave behind something greater than itself. Magdeburg Water Bridge, Germany. Lifting an entire artificial river weighing tens of thousands of tons into the air, the Magdeburg Water Bridge became the longest water bridge on Earth, where cargo ships do not travel on land but quietly sail across the sky. To keep that enormous mass of water working through winter, engineers run a continuous aeration system along the channel to stop the surface from freezing into a giant block of ice that could damage the whole structure. Its strangest feature is that even when a ship weighing thousands of tons enters the bridge, the load on the structure stays almost unchanged because the vessel instantly pushes out an equal weight of water under the principle of Archimedes. To create this flying river stretching nearly half a mile, engineers used about 24,000 tonnes of high-strength steel and about 68,000 cubic yards of concrete, turning what sounded like a mad idea into a real transport structure. The bridge itself works like a giant bathtub hanging in the air, holding about 24,000 tonnes of water at a steady depth of around 14 feet, while ships enter it by passing through massive locks that lift them like hydraulic elevators. Along both sides are paths for pedestrians and cyclists, where you move beside a huge suspended body of water, with ships cutting through it at your shoulder, while looking down into the open space below, creating the eerie feeling of walking along the rim of a bathtub hanging in the sky. Rusky Bridge, Russia. Once mocked as a $1 billion bridge to nowhere, Rusky Bridge now holds the world record for the longest main span among cable-stayed bridges, like a colossal blade of steel stretched across a cold sea. Built at near light speed in only about 4 years to serve a global economic summit, the structure turned what once seemed like a pointless link into a heavy statement of engineering ambition. In winter, the water below can freeze into ice, about 28 inches thick. So the pier foundations had to be shaped like giant blades to crush drifting ice before it could strike the bridge. To suspend its enormous deck across a span of about 3,622 feet, the bridge uses some of the largest stay cables ever made, with the longest reaching about 1,903 feet, like giant steel tendons holding the whole structure above the sea. Its A-shaped towers rise about 1,050 feet high, while the cables are painted white, blue and red like a giant flag in the sky, and when night falls, light washing across them turns the bridge into a floating three-colour glow above the black water. But what truly makes it unusual is that the bridge must survive an annual temperature swing of nearly 130 degrees Fahrenheit. So the deck is not locked rigidly in place, but rests on giant bearings that let the whole structure slide and expand by several feet without tearing itself apart. Hong Kong Zhuhai Macau Bridge. Stretching like a white dragon gliding on the waves, this giant sea crossing route is the most ambitious construction marvel of modern times. Dotted along the route are two beautiful artificial islands shaped like eternal ocean liners quietly anchored. Looking high up, the artistic cable towers rise into the blue sky to simulate a pod of dancing dolphins and wind-filled sails. To survive in the brutally corrosive ocean environment, the project had to use 440,925 short tons of steel enough mass to cast 60 Eiffel Towers. The most heart-stopping experience is when the highway speeding on the water suddenly plunges into the seabed, leading straight into a mysterious underwater tunnel over 4 miles long. Going far beyond all traffic limits, this super project is a statement of humanity's power to conquer nature, connecting distant lands. Veluwemeer Aqueduct, Netherlands. Instead of building a bulky bridge or drilling a deep tunnel through mud, the Dutch chose something far stranger, lifting a strip of water into the air and letting cars pass underneath it. The Veluwemeer Aqueduct became famous for completely reversing normal traffic logic, with boats calmly floating across water about 62 feet wide and 10 feet deep, while vehicles race directly below. To create this hanging water tank about 82 feet long, engineers used roughly 28,800 cubic yards of high-strength concrete and pinned the sunken roadway into the ground with massive steel piling, so it would not be pushed upward by buoyant force. The whole structure cost about $61 million, making it far cheaper than digging a long tunnel beneath the lake, while still preserving the natural water flow so fish and aquatic life could pass through as if no road had ever cut across it. It creates a spectacular crossing point where a calm lake surface and a rushing stream of asphalt slice violently across each other, producing the kind of visual trick that once shocked people around the world. A source of Along both sides are pedestrian paths where you can watch rippling water and passing boats at eye level, while knowing that traffic is speeding right beneath your feet, creating the eerie feeling of standing on the border between two worlds. Zhangjiajie Glass Bridge, China. Throwing a crystal ribbon more than 1,410 feet long across a drop of about 984 feet, this structure once held both the title of the longest and the highest glass-bottom bridge in the world, turning a bridge into a direct confrontation with the abyss. Its most famous feature is the deck made from 99 panels of ultra-clear triple-layer glass, making every step feel like walking on air, while the vast emptiness below looks so real that the brain almost refuses to believe the body is still safe. The bridge has no support pier in the middle of the gorge, but hangs fully between towering sandstone cliffs, where thick fog often swallows both ends and makes it look like a path leading straight into nothingness. To prove the strength of the glass, people once let crowds strike the surface with hammers and then drove a 2-ton SUV across cracked panels, turning the test into a bold answer to every doubt. That direct attack on human survival instinct is why the bridge became famous not only for its design, but also for the sight of visitors crawling, crying, freezing in place, or clutching the rail as they forced themselves to take the next step across the transparent floor. Maeslantkering, Netherlands. Maeslantkering does not stand still like an ordinary dam, but works as a giant steel shield that can swing out and seal the waterway to stop sea storms powerful enough to drown a country where large areas lie below sea level. When activated, the two gates' rise rotate slowly into the channel over about 2 hours, and then let water flood into their hollow chambers so they sink to the bottom and become a massive steel wall against the fury of the sea. What makes it even more unsettling is that the decision to close is not left to human emotion, because a central computer constantly reads weather and water levels and orders the barrier shut when danger passes the safe limit. On normal days, the two enormous white gates rest on either side like the claws of a waiting robot, and each one is about 690 feet long and weighs about 6,800 tons, making even large ships look small as they pass through. Because the structure must stand on loose sand and mud instead of solid rock, it required an extremely complex seabed reinforcement system. While each gate is linked to land by a steel ball joint about 33 feet wide, so it can both rotate and lower into the water. Completed in about 6 years at a cost of more than $500 million, Maeslantkering is not only a mechanical masterpiece, but the final defensive line between modern life and the destructive force of the sea. Amazon spheres, United States. Like giant diamonds dropped from the future, Amazon spheres appears as a strange cloud forest office in the middle of the United States. The strongest visual shock is a 4-story vertical garden with more than 25,000 plants falling through the space like a green waterfall. Instead of long rows of dry desks, workers move across hanging bridges or hold meetings inside wooden bird nests high above the ground. Around them are 3 glass domes made from more than 2,600 glass panels, sheltering about 40,000 plants from more than 400 species, so the place feels more like a forest than an office. At the centre of that indoor forest stands a giant fig tree about 56 feet tall and nearly 35,000 pounds in weight, like the living heart of the whole structure. When night falls, the 3 domes glow in white and blue, looking like an alien space station that has just landed on Earth. Chengdu Science Fiction Museum, China. From a distance, the Chengdu Science Fiction Museum looks like a giant spacecraft touching down on the water, making the whole building feel as if it is drifting out of the future. On the outside, its flowing skin was shaped to catch wind from the lake, creating natural ventilation and reducing the need for large air conditioning systems. So, the metal dome was also planned to match the path of the sun and fitted with solar panels, so this spacecraft can produce part of its own power for lighting. Opened in 2023 and designed by Zaha Hadid Architects. This complex of about 635,000 square feet is not only a museum, but also includes a theatre exhibition spaces and a conference centre. Sure. At the centre is a giant skylight that pulls in natural light and helps cut about 30% of daytime lighting power. Set in a city with more than 4,000 years of history, this museum feels like a time gate, carrying humanity straight from the past into the year 3000. Pelješac's Bridge, Croatia. The Pelješac's Bridge is remembered not only for its scale, but because it permanently joined 2 parts of a country that had been separated for decades, allowing people to travel across their own land without detouring through another nation. The project is especially unusual because it was funded mainly by the European Union, but built by a Chinese state-owned company, making it a rare symbol of Western money, combined with Eastern construction speed. To survive brutal wind and a hostile marine environment, the bridge was protected with a specially engineered concrete skin able to resist sea salt corrosion for at least 100 years, while its structure was assembled from about 77,000 tonnes of steel girders shipped halfway around the world. Stretching about 2 miles across turquoise water, the cable-stayed bridge rises with 6 white pylons and hundreds of cables looking like a giant harp suspended between sky and sea. One remarkable detail is that the bridge was raised to about 180 feet of clearance, so large ships could still pass beneath it. And during offshore piling, engineers used an underwater bubble curtain to reduce noise and protect dolphins and marine life. Although it cost about €500 million and was open free to all vehicles, the bridge is not just an engineering triumph, but also a symbol of territorial unity and freedom of movement that people had waited far too long to reclaim. Panlong interchange. Breaking every normal design rule, Huangzhouan looks like a giant bowl of concrete noodles dropped into the middle of Chongqing. From that giant traffic knot, roads split into 8 different directions to connect the city centre, the main airport, and the main economic routes. That is why this place is known as a driver's nightmare, because its 20 twisting ramps feel like roller coasters and can confuse even modern GPS systems. It took 8 years to build this maze, stacking 5 road levels on top of each other, with the highest point hanging about 121 feet above the ground. If you stand at the lowest level and look up, you almost cannot see the sky, only huge concrete arches crossing over you like an artificial cave in broad daylight. When night falls, the street lights and the long red and white streams of traffic make the whole mass of concrete glow like the core of a futuristic city. City of Arts and Sciences, Spain. Rising from the dry Turia riverbed left behind after the flood of 1957, this bright white world worth about 1.3 billion US dollars looks like the bones of creatures from the future. Its science fiction look was strong enough to make it a setting for Tomorrowland and Westworld, so standing among the reflecting pools can feel like stepping out of the present. The most striking piece is Le Hemispheric, a giant eye-shaped building whose steel eyelid opens and closes, then completes itself in the still water below. Across a site of about 3,800,000 square feet, Santiago Calatrava turned the former riverbed into one of the 12 treasures of Spain. Its curved surfaces are covered with millions of handmade white ceramic pieces, which make the whole complex shimmer in sunlight like living fish scales. Standing there feels like being in the year 2100, even though the complex still belongs to a Valencia with a very deep past. Copenhagen, Denmark. In a country as flat as Denmark, Copenhagen rises like a strange green mountain, blurring the line between a waste plant and a public playground. Here you can see a rare sight: people skiing and walking right above furnaces where waste is being burned. The most shocking part is the green slope, about 1,476 feet long, running down the roof and letting people ski all year in the middle of the city. Each year, this $670 million project handles more than 535,000 tonnes of waste to produce electricity and heating for tens of thousands of homes. Around the silver steel structure are shining aluminum panels, a climbing wall about 279 feet high, and a rooftop forest with more than 7,000 shrubs and 300 trees. Even so, its cleaning system removes 99.9% of harmful gases, so what leaves the chimney is almost only clean water vapour, turning a place linked with waste into something people truly want to see. The vessel United States. In the middle of New York's glass towers, a copper coloured hive rises like something dropped in from the future. When you stand at the centre and look straight up the stair lines, close into a circle, and make it feel as if you are falling into a giant kaleidoscope. Inside are 154 stair flights, 2,500 steps, and 80 landings. So even a few steps can completely change the view around you. Its polished metal skin works like a mirror catching sunlight clouds and the nearby towers, which makes the whole structure seem to keep moving. Another strange detail is that the vessel was only a code name during construction, and even now the structure still does not have a truly widely accepted official name. Those rising stairways are not only for climbing and looking out, but also feel like a small image of New York's fast rhythm and its constant desire to rise higher. Museo Sumaya shines in the heart of Mexico City as a sweeping silver form, breaking every dry stereotype of what a museum is supposed to look like. To keep art open to everyone, it welcomes visitors every day of the year without exception. Rising to about 151 feet, the building holds more than 66,000 works by internationally known artists. It was also created as a monument of love dedicated to the late wife of one of the world's richest businessmen. Its outer skin is made from 16,000 aluminum tiles set with narrow gaps, allowing the structure to breathe and respond to changes in temperature. When the sun begins to fall, the metallic surface catches the light and turns the whole museum into a glowing beacon of art. Nanpu Bridge. Inside crowded Shanghai, Nanpu Bridge curls like a giant concrete dragon, using a spiral approach instead of a long ramp that would have taken too much land at it. Each day, the bridge carries about 120,000 vehicles, turning that spiral into a huge stream of traffic that never stops moving. The main span rises about 151 feet above the water, high enough for ships weighing 55,000 tonnes to pass below without being blocked. The Pearl is about 1,388 feet wide, carrying cars through several layers of space before suddenly pushing them onto the main bridge. This project, costing about 820 million US dollars, was finished in only 3 years and became a major mark of modern bridge engineering. When night falls, the spiral road and bridge cables light up together, turning Nanpu Bridge into a floating maze of light inside a future-like city. Baihetan Dam, China. The Baihetan Dam is the world's second largest hydroelectric power station, and it was also the first project to put 1,000 megawatt water turbines into operation, pushing power engineering into a new era. When the river is held back, the reservoir appears like a deep blue ribbon between grey-brown cliffs, while moisture rising from the narrow valley often gathers into fog and low cloud around the dam, giving the place a grand but strangely quiet atmosphere. Whenever the spillways open, water blasts out at about 150 feet per second, with pressure so extreme that even a small leak could form a jet powerful enough to cut into solid steel, revealing the force this structure must contain. Although the main construction surged ahead in a little over 5 years, the project had actually been prepared quietly since 2008. And behind the roughly $32 billion achievement was a heavy human cost, with more than 100,000 people forced to leave their homes forever. Taipei 101. Taiwan. Rising from the ground like a bamboo tower made of steel and glass, Taipei 101 ruled the world skyline from 2004 to 2010 and still remains one of the strongest symbols of modern Asian architecture. When low cloud and heavy mist fill the basin, the lower half of the tower can disappear completely, leaving only the upper levels floating above a white sea and making it feel like an observation station hanging in the sky. Inside the building is an elevator system that once ranked as the fastest in the world, climbing at about 38 miles per hour and carrying visitors to the observatory in around 37 seconds, while keeping air pressure stable enough to prevent ear pain or dizziness. The tower is shaped in 8 stacked sections, each with 8 outward floors like bamboo joints, a design that suggests prosperity in East Asian culture while also breaking apart typhoon winds before they hit the structure too hard. Near the top hangs a golden steel sphere weighing about 660 tonnes, working as a giant damper that swings against strong wind and ground motion to keep the tower from twisting during major storms or earthquakes. Built for about $2 billion dollars over nearly 5 years, the structure was designed not only to impress with height, but to survive in one of the harshest natural environments a skyscraper can face. Moe's Italy. Sleeping beneath the seabed like an invisible machine, Moe's rises only when storm tides become violent enough to threaten the survival of a historic city standing fragile against the sea. When the system is activated, dozens of yellow barriers rise together from the grey water, creating a surreal image like a giant set of steel teeth suddenly emerging to bite back the waves. Each barrier is linked to its concrete base by joints weighing about 42 tonnes, built with extremely high precision so they do not jam because of sand debris or sea life while working in salt water. But behind this engineering feat, which consumed nearly $7 billion dollars after decades of delay, lies a cold truth: the system may only buy less than 100 years before the sea finally overtakes it. Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, Ethiopia. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is not just a giant hydroelectric project, but a colossal machine, holding both the energy future and the political tension of a vast region in its hands. When all 13 turbines run at full power, the structure can produce enough electricity to light the lives of about 60 million people, making it one of the biggest new sources of power on the continent. Rejected by many international financiers, this roughly $5 billion project was built mainly through bonds donations and the wages of ordinary citizens, making it both a source of pride and a massive national burden. Çanakkale Bridge, Turkey. Dethroning a world record that had lasted for 2 decades. This $2.8 billion suspension bridge slices across the strait like a colossal blade of steel, joining Asia and Europe with a single curve suspended between sea and sky. One astonishing detail is that the clearance beneath it rises to nearly 246 feet above the water, high enough for giant ships to pass below, giving drivers the eerie feeling of gliding along a narrow line hung between the ocean and the clouds. On days of thick fog, the body of the bridge seems to vanish from the real world, leaving only red cables spreading from the dim tower tops like sharp streaks of light tearing open the grey sky. What also makes the structure extraordinary is that almost every major number on it carries memorial meaning. From the main span of about 2,023 metres, recalling the nation's centennial, to the Twin Towers rising about 1,043 feet, in memory of March 18th, the date of a bloody First World War naval battle. To keep its blade-thin deck stable against violent wind earthquakes and savage currents, engineers carved a 30-foot aerodynamic gap through the centre of the roadway and set the 2 giant towers on artificial gravel cushions so they could shift slightly when seismic force struck. More than merely cutting the crossing time to about 6 minutes, the bridge carries a deeper purpose because it ended the old struggle of cramming onto ferries and waiting for hours just to move from one shore of the Asia-Europe boundary to the other. The interlace, Singapore. Instead of rising as a lonely skyscraper, the interlace was effectively broken into 31 six-storey blocks and stacked across one another, forming a giant concrete maze that seems to float in midair. Although it stands on a site of only about 20 acres, the complex still fits about 1,040 large apartments. Yet its spread out arrangement makes it feel less like a crowded tower and more like an open village lifted above the ground. The roof of one block becomes gardens, pools, and shared space for the block above, allowing greenery and hanging plants to spread through the project as if nature were climbing back into the concrete. Its appearance, like a colossal game of Jenga frozen halfway through play, made it famous around the world and helped it win World Building of the Year in 2015. By rotating the blocks in different directions, almost every apartment opens toward greenery water or open sky, turning the project from a dense housing mass into a true vertical village, unlike the usual sealed residential block. Muir Island, Murinsel, Austria. Thrown like a spacecraft into the middle of a historic landscape, Muir Island is actually a 470-ton floating steel mass anchored in a fast-moving river, like an island with no earth inside it. When night falls, the whole structure is washed in blue light from below, turning the metal body into a glowing object above black water, like an alien survival station that has just landed in the city. Two steel walkways stretch out from the riverbanks like tentacles pinning the structure against the current, while the curved shell itself was shaped to catch and amplify the sound of rushing water for the people inside. The entire structure was woven from thousands of steel bars into the form of a giant half-open shell, first created as a temporary pavilion in 2003, but later kept forever because it was too strange and too memorable to remove. Even though it looks like an untouchable monument, this floating steel mass allows no more than about 350 people on it at once, because anything beyond that moves dangerously close to its load limit. Rudong Offshore Wind Farm. In the open sea, Rudong Offshore Wind Farm looks like a giant forest of machines turning, without rest, to pull endless energy from the wind. The huge flow of power is then sent all the way back to land through an armoured undersea cable about 62 miles long, lying on the seabed like a giant vein. The most unusual part is that this was the first offshore direct current project of its kind in China, with a converter station weighing about 22,000 tonnes and standing as tall as a 15-story building in the middle of the sea, like a base from the future. Around it, hundreds of white turbines stretched to the horizon, each one rising hundreds of feet above the water with blades sweeping more than 550 feet across, making people feel tiny beside them. To keep the whole system standing firm, engineers had to drive steel piles about 23 feet wide and nearly 328 feet long deep into the seabed. At full power, this giant project can supply about 1,360,000 homes, while also cutting the need for about 550,000 tonnes of coal and reducing about 1,460,000 tonnes of emissions each year. The Helix Bridge, Singapore. By directly copying the DNA structure of life and enlarging it in steel, the Helix Bridge became the only curved double helix pedestrian bridge in the world, like a giant strand of genetic code suspended above the water. Four oval viewing decks project out from the bridge, letting visitors stand above the water and take in the whole surrounding scene from a position that feels almost suspended in mid-air. Once inside, it feels like being drawn into a biological tunnel of steel and glass, while the glowing letters CGA and T on the floor remind you that every step crosses the basic code of life itself. When night falls, LED strips along the steel frame light up in sequence, creating the illusion that the bridge is breathing, transforming it from a walkway into a glowing strand of genetic code in the dark. Khan Shadta Entertainment Center, Kazakhstan. Rising from a step where winter can freeze an entire city, this structure appears like a giant futuristic tent trapping a warm world behind its transparent skin. What makes it even more intense is that its ETFE membrane does not only hold warmth, but also has to deal with large static electric buildup caused by constant wind friction, because dangerous electrical discharge could otherwise form across the surface. Inside that tent is an entire artificial world of shopping entertainment and a tropical beach on the top level where white sand was brought in from the Maldives to create the feeling of summer in the middle of frozen land. Where night falls, light glows through the Prosrichnit membrane and makes the whole structure shine in the dark snow like a giant crystal, trying to preserve an eternal summer at the frozen edge of the world. The Gateway Arch, United States. More than a lifeless mass of steel, this superstructure acts like a giant mirror that swallows the soul of the sky and throws it back as shifting waves of eerie colour. The Gateway Arch is not only the tallest monument in the United States, at about 630 feet, but also the tallest steel arch in the world. What makes it especially remarkable is that its form is a perfect catenary curve, and both its height and the distance between its two legs are exactly about 630 feet, creating an almost perfect balance. Its surface is wrapped in about 900 tons of stainless steel. Yet inside, there is no steel frame, like a skyscraper, because the steel skin and the concrete core are joined together to carry the entire load of the structure by themselves. Because of that steep, curved shape, engineers had to create a one-of-a-kind tram system in which small round capsules keep rotating so the people inside remain upright as they travel toward the top. At a height of about 630 feet, the top is not spacious at all, but lined with tiny windows only about 7 by 27 inches, forcing visitors to lean against the sloping steel wall if they want to look down into the dizzying space below. You see? Even more striking, the outer steel skin keeps changing colour, with the light and the weather sometimes shining cold like silver in the midday sun, sometimes turning bronze gold at sunset, and sometimes fading into a soft grey shadow when river fog rises around it. Metropole Parasol, Spain. Looking like a giant wooden cloud floating above an old city, Metropole Parasol is the largest glue-laminated timber structure in the world, a work so strange that it cannot be mistaken for anything else. Inside it, several layers of space are stacked together from the archaeological zone below ground to a market, a public plaza, and a panoramic deck above, making the whole place feel like a machine, connecting different layers of time in one location. The openings in the frame are not only for appearance but also pull natural wind through the structure to soften the summer heat, while casting wide areas of shade across the plaza below. The project was born after plans for a parking garage unexpectedly uncovered archaeological remains. So instead of burying the past, designers raised a huge umbrella to protect it and create a new symbol for the city. The wooden canopy is built from more than 3,000 interlocking pine elements stretching about 492 feet long, 230 feet wide, and 85 feet high, while the giant mushroom stems below not only support the roof, but also contain elevators and technical systems inside. Ponte Lupuchina. Quando foi inaugurada, essa mega estrutura de aço de 300 milhões de dólares detinha o recorde mundial de ponte em arco de aço mais longa cruzando o rio com um vão principal de cerca de 550 metros e sem nenhum pilar de apoio na água. O que mais chamou a atenção dos engenheiros foi que seu arco principal não foi unido com parafusos nem rebites, mas se tornou a primeira ponte do mundo a usar soldagem completa nas seções centrais do arco, transformando toda a estrutura em uma única massa contínua de aço. A pista de 6 faixas fica suspensa abaixo do arco por uma rede densa de cabos de aço, criando a sensação estranha de que todo o fluxo de trânsito atravessa um enorme balanço de aço. Sua característica mais famosa é que os visitantes não apenas cruzam a ponte, mas também podem subir mais de 300 degraus ao longo da lateral curva de aço para ficar a cerca de 100 metros acima da água e observar a cidade lá embaixo. Para manter esse corpo gigantesco de aço estável sobre o terreno fraco e lodoso, à beira do rio, os engenheiros precisaram criar um sistema oculto de fundação enorme, ao mesmo tempo em que permitiam que a estrutura se expandisse e se contraísse com a temperatura sem se romper. Quando a noite cai, milhares de luzes correndo ao longo do arco transformam o aço frio em uma fita delicada e colorida de luz flutuando sobre o rio. The Atomium, Belgium. Unlike an ordinary building, the atomium is a model of an iron crystal enlarged about 165 billion times, turning something normally seen only under a microscope into a giant steel structure about 335 feet high. The whole monument is made of 9 metal spheres, nearly 59 feet wide, linked together by 20 large steel tubes. And their highly polished stainless steel skin works like giant convex mirrors, pulling in the sky and bending clouds, light, and even the images of people standing below. It was created for a World Expo, and was originally meant to exist for only 6 months, but its strange appearance made people keep it forever as a symbol of the country. Inside, the connecting tubes are steep escalators and bright passageways, making the movement feel like travelling inside a spaceship. The highest sphere contains an elegant restaurant where dinner can come with the strange thrill of feeling the giant metal structure sway slightly when strong wind hits it, while another sphere becomes a bizarre atomic hotel with suspended sleeping pods reserved only for groups of primary school children staying overnight. When night falls, thousands of lights running around the spheres make the whole monument look like an atom that is truly in motion, turning the heavy steel mass into a futuristic object floating in the dark. The Eden Project, United Kingdom. From the bottom of a clay pit, once mined almost to exhaustion, this place rose like a giant biological lifeboat, protecting an entire rainforest inside the cold, damp climate of Britain. The largest dome stands about 180 feet high and 328 feet wide, large enough to hold an entire London tower inside. And it is also the place where more than 1 million plants from around the world were brought together to bring life back to land once left abandoned. Instead of using heavy glass, the domes are built from thousands of light, transparent ETFE cushions that let sunlight pass through easily while still keeping enough warmth for plants to grow. Inside the rainforest area, temperatures stay around 64 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit with humidity near 90%. So stepping through the entrance feels like leaving Britain and walking straight into an Amazon-like forest filled with steam birdsong and waterfalls. To heat this giant living space through the cold season, deep geothermal wells reaching about 3 miles were drilled to draw warmth from the ground. While about 85,000 tonnes of fertile soil were also created from waste coffee grounds and mineral dust. When night falls, light shines through the huge hexagonal domes and makes the dark pit glow like an alien base, quietly protecting life at the bottom of a crater. The Great Mosque of Algiers, Jama El Jazair, Algeria. This is not only a giant mosque that cost about $2 billion to build, but also the site of the tallest minaret in the world, rising about 869 feet, like a huge white spear beside the sea. The floor of the main hall is not left as cold stone, but covered by a vast woven carpet, whose patterns had to be distributed with supercomputer precision, while also absorbing the footsteps of tens of thousands of people and keeping the huge interior strangely quiet. Hanging at the centre of the dome is a chandelier weighing about 9.5 tonnes and set with 137,000 crystals floating like a giant star burning above the crowd below. Because it was built in an area with serious earthquake risk, the whole structure is not locked rigidly to the ground, but placed on about 250 seismic isolators so it can slide gently when the earth shakes violently. Inside is a vast prayer hall, large enough to hold about 120,000 people at once, with 618 white marble columns carved like lilies rising upward to support the dome above. When night falls, the laser system at the top of the tower sends powerful beams into the darkness toward the sacred direction, turning the minaret into a giant lighthouse that can be seen from far out at sea. Layerdal Tunnel, Norway. Bored straight through the belly of a colossal mountain mass. The Layerdal Tunnel is the longest road tunnel on Earth built, so this vital transport route would not be cut apart by winter storms and blizzards. Hidden beneath the roadway is an extreme safety system where about every 800 feet there are emergency phones and fire extinguishers spawns, and if even one extinguisher is lifted from its holder, the control centre can immediately trigger alarms and close the tunnel gates at both ends. About every 4 miles, the tunnel opens into 3 huge artificial mountain caverns filled with blue and amber light wide enough for large vehicles to turn around, giving panicked drivers a place to stop while making the space look like a frozen cave buried deep underground. But the most chilling fact is that although it runs for more than 15 miles, with some sections buried under thousands of feet of mountain rock, it has no escape shaft rising to the surface. So if disaster strikes, the only choices are to keep going forward or turn back through the same endless tube. Harbin Opera House, China. Like a snow mountain rising from frozen land, this building, completed in 2015, quickly became the soul of a UNESCO City of Music. At the top, a glass skylight with a crystal-like steel frame spreads daylight into the main lobby, making the inside shine as if snow were falling through the air. In a place where winter can fall to 40 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, the roof and glass sections even use a special snow handling system that melts snow and sends the water into drains. Wrapped in flowing white aluminum, the Opera House looks as if wind and water shaped ice into architecture, and in snowy months, it almost disappears into the landscape. In the smaller theatre, a huge glass wall behind the stage lets the audience watch a performance while still seeing the natural world outside as part of the scene. Even more unusual, both ticket holders and casual visitors can follow carved exterior paths up to the top where the view opens wide like the summit of a man-made snow hill. Jewel Changjai Airport, Singapore. Breaking every familiar idea of an airport, this place opens like a magical green valley where technology and nature move together in one living world. In the middle of that scene, driverless trains glide past the giant wall of falling water, creating a future image that feels both strange and beautiful. Above it all is a glass and steel grid shell weighing about 6,600 tonnes, built from more than 9,000 glass panels and creating a space that is almost free of central columns. At the centre, the indoor waterfall drops about 131 feet, using rainwater that is constantly collected and filtered, so its dramatic beauty is also part of a very smart system. Around it grows a tropical forest with more than 2,000 trees and 100,000 shrubs, working like a green lung that keeps the inside cool and comfortable aura. Jewel is not only an amazing destination, but also Singapore's way of turning the dream of a green city into a real experience through air travel shopping and rainforest life. Beauty Crown Cultural Centre, China. More than $1 billion created 9 giant concrete trees shaped like Lego blocks beside the water, making the whole complex look like a surreal forest built by human hands. At night, the outer skin of the towers turns into huge LED screens, letting fish swim and dragons fly smoothly from one tree to another. Stop. It's In the middle of that forest of light stands the Crown Theatre with 3,500 seats, built especially for Miss World and used for Reinaroho international beauty events. Inside the 9 blocks are 6,668 rooms, along with shops, restaurants, bars, and cultural spaces, enough to make it one of the largest hotel complexes in the world. Each tree rises about 328 feet high, so from far away, the whole project feels like an artificial forest growing straight up from the water's edge. But financial trouble later slowed the dream, leaving large parts dark and underused and giving the complex the image of a giant ghost hotel. Fuji TV Building, Japan. Appearing like a space station from a science fiction film, this building, completed in 1997, shocks people with 2 huge towers holding a floating titanium sphere in the air. The exposed walkways crossing between the towers also create a giant frame in the sky holding the red sunset over the sea like a living picture. Behind that bold shape is a super strong steel frame, carefully engineered so the building can stand against earthquakes as strong as magnitude 8. The sphere itself is about 105 feet wide and fully covered in titanium, so under sunlight, it shines like a metal pearl hanging in the sky. It is also one of the most iconic works from the later part of Kenzo Tange's career, like a statement that Japan had already imagined the future nearly 3 decades ago. Museum of the Future, United Arab Emirates. Looking like an oval spacecraft that has just landed on a grassy hill, this museum rises about 253 feet high and feels like a gate into a future that does not exist yet. It was not created only to display objects, but as a living museum where people test new ideas and think about how tomorrow can be shaped. While beneath that metal form is a green mound planted with more than 100 drought-resistant species, which keeps this strange building closely tied to the earth. What feels even more surprising is that there are no interior columns, because the whole structure is held by 2,400 crossed steel members like the skeleton of a giant machine. Around it, 1,024 steel panels cut by robots with digital design for Arabic calligraphy then glow through about 9 miles of LED lighting like an object making its own energy. Its full shape also carries 3 meanings. The green hill is Earth. The metal form is human intelligence, and the empty centre is the future that has not yet been written. Masdar City United Arab Emirates. In the middle of the desert heat, Masdar City was born from a $22 billion dream of a city with no carbon and no waste. But it is not only a city because it also works like a living laboratory where people test how future cities can use, save and share resources. Its energy begins with a solar field of about 54 acres and 87,777 panels, while household water is reused to cut total consumption. Above that narrow shaded walkways, earth-coloured materials and wind towers about 148 feet tall help the air feel more comfortable. Often about 9 to 18 degrees Fahrenheit are cooler than the hotter urban surroundings. Even though it is still unfinished, compared with the first dream, Masdar still shows that people can learn to live more intelligently in one of the harshest places on Earth. Katara Towers, Qatar. Inspired by Qatar's national emblem, this luxury resort rises like 2 curved swords crossing in the sky, so it stays in memory after just one look. In this hot and dry land, it also reuses water and became the first hospitality project in Qatar to receive a GSA S design and build 5-star rating at the design stage. That same shape lets the 2 towers cast shade on each other, which is why the project was expected to use about 40% less power than many buildings of similar size. As the structure rises to about 692 feet, the 2 curved branches seem to lean outward, turning the whole tower into a tense piece of engineering. Hidden inside those 2 blades are Raffles Doha and Fairmont Doha, making the building not only an architectural symbol, but also a private stage for extreme luxury. Depot Boijmans, Van Beuningen, Netherlands. Like a giant mirrored bowl dropped from the future, this building opens the backstage world that museums usually hide. Inside, the storage is not arranged by famous names or time periods, but in 14 sections with 5 climate types for different materials. As you move through the glass stairs and glass elevators, you can see paintings on sliding racks, sculptures in protected rooms, and experts restoring them. Instead of hiding them in darkness, more than 152,000 works are kept in open storage so the public can see almost the whole collection. Its skin rises almost 130 feet high and is built from 1,664 mirror panels, so the building can almost disappear into the sky and trees around it. The depot makes one idea feel very clear. Art should not be locked away, but given back to everyone. Bosco Verticale, Italy. In the middle of Milan's concrete city, these two towers rise like a clear statement that nature does not have to disappear from urban life. To care for the plants without depending too much on chemicals, thousands of ladybugs were released, and over time the towers became a stopping place for birds and butterflies. In summer, the thick layer of leaves helps keep the apartments about 5 degrees Fahrenheit cooler, so the building saves energy without needing too much air conditioning. Bosco Verticale has two towers about 361 feet and 249 feet tall, carrying more than 800 trees, 15,000 shrubs, and 5,000 smaller plants like a forest lifted into the sky. Thanks to that green layer, the project absorbs about 33 tonnes of carbon dioxide each year, releases about 21 tonnes of oxygen, and also helps filter dust and soften city noise. That creativity helped Bosco Verticale be recognised as one of the most beautiful and innovative skyscrapers in the world. Khan Shatyr, Kazakhstan. In one of the coldest places on Earth, Khan Shatyr rises like a glowing tropical oasis in the middle of a frozen city. This structure stands about 492 feet tall and holds the record as the largest tensile tent on the planet, with about 1,507,000 square feet of floor space. Because of its special outer skin and the heating system under the ground, The inside stays at about 59 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit, even when the weather outside can drop to about minus 31 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside, the base opens like another world with green terraced gardens rising step by step toward the top of the tent. The most amazing part is the white sand beach and artificial waves above where visitors can sunbathe and swim while snow is still falling outside. Kanshatia is not only a place for fun, but also proof that people can create an endless summer in one of the coldest lands in the world. Crossrail Place Roof Garden, United Kingdom. Like a giant wooden spacecraft landing on top of a station, this garden floats above London like a very unusual green oasis. In the middle of a busy urban area, it also works like a lung in the sky, helping hold back fine dust and giving people cleaner air each day. The roof is not fully closed, so rainwater can still reach the plants, while the growing soil is very light to avoid putting too much weight on the station below. Another unusual detail is that it sits almost exactly on the prime meridian, so the east side is planted with Asian species, while the west side holds plants from the Americas. Its wooden roof stretches about 1,017 feet and uses more than 1,000 beams, making it one of London's largest rooftop gardens, while also recalling Britain's old trading ships. This place is a strong image of how an old industrial dockland can come back to life as green space for the community. Galaxy S OHO Beijing appears like a futuristic space station where sharp edges disappear and everything flows in smooth, elegant curves. When sunset fades, the LED lines wrapped around the buildings begin to glow, turning the whole complex into a shining galaxy in the middle of the city. Thanks to its layered design that captures natural light, the interior keeps changing through the day as the sun moves across the sky. Even with its highly futuristic look, the project still carries the spirit of traditional courtyards, designed to keep people connected through shared open space. The sweeping curves were carefully calculated with advanced digital modelling so the structure could stay both fluid in form and strong in support. And although it is enormous in scale, it was completed in just 30 months, becoming one of the most recognisable new icons of Beijing. 1,000 Trees China appears in Shanghai like a magnificent green mountain range, breaking the sameness of glass box skyscrapers. Heatherwick transformed raw structural columns into giant elevated planters, turning the whole complex into a living forest above the city. The greenery is so extensive that it helps soften the urban heat and can lower the surrounding temperature by several degrees. On the southern side, huge graffiti walls bring in the creative energy of the nearby art district and give the project a bold, cultural edge. Built on the site of a former flour mill, it has become a powerful symbol of renewal along Suzhou Creek. In the end, this place feels like proof that when architecture makes room for trees, a building can begin to feel truly alive. One Central Park, Sydney, stands as a green wonder in Sydney, where living plants seem to replace the cold emptiness of ordinary glass walls. To keep this vertical forest alive, the greenery is supported by recycled water from a treatment system built directly into the basement. These planted walls also work like natural insulation, helping reduce the building's surface temperature by about 18 degrees Fahrenheit during the hottest summer days. One of its most unusual features is that trained gardeners must descend from the top like real-life climbers to trim plants growing more than 328 feet above the ground. A huge cantilevered mirror system also stretches into the air, redirecting sunlight into the darker spaces below and bringing light where it would not normally reach. It stands as a powerful example that modern architecture does not have to fight nature but can grow by breathing with it. China, Zun. Among the glass towers of Beijing, China Zun rises about 1,732 feet high, like a giant ancient vessel pulled straight into the clouds, changing the whole feeling of the skyline around it. The most surprising part is that its top spreads about 82 feet wider than its narrowest waist, making it look like a giant crown floating in the air. To keep a structure weighing about 386,000 tonnes from breaking, when the ground shakes, the tower uses a huge concrete core in the middle, together with strong steel columns around it so it can stay both firm and flexible. Even more astonishing, it is also the only super tall building above 1,640 feet standing in an area with intensity 8 earthquake risk. Xiaolangdi Dam. Costing about $5 billion Xiaolangdi Dam is not just a hydropower dam, but a giant machine built across the Yellow River to hold back a river feared for floods and heavy sediment. To control that force, engineers hollowed out the mountainside and carved a web of underground release tunnels, turning the project into an extremely complex hidden system below the surface. Over the last 2,000 years, the Yellow River has broken its banks about 1,500 times and changed course 26 times, taking millions of lives. So this dam feels like the hardest answer yet to a long and bloody history. Every year, the river carries about 1.8 billion tonnes of silt, enough to build a road about 3 feet high and 3 feet wide around the Earth 27 times. And because of that, Xiaolangdi uses artificial flood releases to wash out an average of about 33 million tonnes of mud from the reservoir each year, sending it toward the sea and keeping the lower river from choking. When the floodgates burst open, dozens of thick yellow columns of water shoot into the air and rush forward like dragons roaring as they tear across the sky. Rudong Offshore Wind Farm. In the open sea, Rudong Offshore Wind Farm looks like a giant forest of machines turning without rest to pull endless energy from the wind. The huge flow of power is then sent all the way back to land through an armoured undersea cable about 62 miles long, lying on the seabed like a giant vein. The most unusual part is that this was the first offshore direct current project of its kind in China, with a converter station weighing about 22,000 tonnes and standing as tall as a 15-storey building in the middle of the sea, like a base from the future. Around it, hundreds of white turbines stretched to the horizon, each one rising hundreds of feet above the water with blades sweeping more than 550 feet across, making people feel tiny beside them. To keep the whole system standing firm, engineers had to drive steel piles about 23 feet wide and nearly 328 feet long deep into the seabed. At full power, this giant project can supply about 1,360,000 homes, while also cutting the need for about 550,000 tonnes of coal and reducing about 1,460,000 tonnes of emissions each year. Panlong interchange. Breaking every normal design rule, Huangzhouan looks like a giant bowl of concrete noodles dropped into the middle of Chongqing. From that giant traffic knot, roads split into 8 different directions to connect the city centre, the main airport and the main economic routes. That is why this place is known as a driver's nightmare, because its 20 twisting ramps feel like roller coasters and can confuse even modern GPS systems. It took 8 years to build this maze, stacking 5 road levels on top of each other, with the highest point hanging about 121 feet above the ground. Where night falls, the street lights and the long red and white streams of traffic make the whole mass of concrete glow like the core of a futuristic city. Bird's Nest. This is the largest steel structure on Earth, built from about 42,000 tonnes of steel, twisted into a giant skeleton that can hold itself up without any central columns. Even when it holds nearly 100,000 people, the stadium can still feel open because natural wind moves through the steel shell and pushes heat away. To place every huge steel member correctly, workers needed more than 10,000 detailed three-dimensional drawings, because even a small mistake could throw the whole structure out of balance. The strangest part is that the building does not hide its support system, but shows the whole steel web on the outside, turning its cold skeleton into its most famous beauty. It took 5 years to build and cost about 428 million US dollars, becoming not only a sports venue but also a steel statement from a rising era. When night falls, red or golden light shines out from inside through the cold grey steel, making the whole building glow like a giant lantern burning in the city. Tiangong Space Station. Orbiting Earth like a palace in the sky. Tiangong is not only a space laboratory but also the only space station today operated by a single country. Through the window, astronauts can see auroras dancing below their feet, while Earth curves like a fragile blue crystal in the darkness. Moving about 280 miles above Earth at nearly 17,400 miles per hour. The station circles the planet in only 90 minutes and creates 16 sunrises each day. Outside, its giant solar panels keep turning toward the light, shining like silver ribbons in the blackness of space. Its robotic arm is about 33 feet long and can lift 20-ton parts as gently as picking up a leaf with amazing precision. The station's layered shell works like armour, protecting people from fierce radiation and tiny space debris flying past at deadly speed. Nanpu Bridge. Inside crowded Shanghai, Nanpu Bridge curls like a giant concrete dragon, using a spiral approach instead of a long ramp that would have taken too much land at it. Each day, the bridge carries about 120,000 vehicles, turning that spiral into a huge stream of traffic that never stops moving. The main span rises about 151 feet above the water, high enough for ships weighing 55,000 tonnes to pass below without being blocked. The Pearl is about 1,388 feet wide, carrying cars through several layers of space before suddenly pushing them onto the main bridge. This project, costing about 820 million US dollars, was finished in only 3 years and became a major mark of modern bridge engineering. When night falls, the spiral road and bridge cables light up together, turning Nampu Bridge into a floating maze of light inside a future-like city. Signing Railway Station. Standing at the gateway to a mysterious highland region, Zinning Railway Station is the true starting point for the journey to conquer the highest railway on Earth. Inside the station works like a giant transfer hub where people and goods begin moving into a high, distant, and harsh land. Outside, thousands of reflective glass panels catch the sharp sunlight, making the whole structure shine like a giant diamond on the plateau. At about 7,200 feet above sea level, this place feels like an airport on the ground, preparing special trains to enter air that keeps getting thinner. The trains leaving the station are sealed like aircraft bodies to keep pressure and oxygen stable, helping passengers feel less dizzy as the altitude rises. With 9 platforms and 21 tracks, this project shows the amazing scale of a railway station built at such a great height. Tianjin Binhai Library. Seen through its giant glass wall, Tianjin Binhai Library looks like a huge white eye watching the world. The most shocking detail is that many book spines on the upper levels are only images printed on aluminum, creating the illusion of an endless sea of knowledge. The white sphere at the centre is called the eye, while the curved shelves around it look like a giant eye socket holding the light. By design, the library can hold up to 1.2 million books, enough to turn the space into a vast ocean of knowledge inside the city. Instead of stiff bookshelves, the walls bend into soft flowing curves where shelves also become stairs and reading seats. Tianjin Binhai Library is therefore not only a place to read, but a visual stage where light curves and knowledge create a world of their own. The giant egg, like a giant silver egg, floating in a lake. The giant egg looks like a spacecraft that has just landed in the middle of an ancient city. To enter, you must walk through an underwater glass tunnel about 262 feet long, where light passing through the lake makes it feel like an underground palace. Inside are three separate performance halls, carefully shaped so more than 5,000 spectators can still feel every sound clearly. Its dome, about 696 feet long, took 6 years to build and is covered with 18,000 titanium panels and 1,200 strong glass panels without needing support columns. The surrounding lake, covering more than 376,000 square feet, works like a giant mirror, joining the reflection and the dome into one perfect oval. The giant egg is not only a theatre, but a bright collision of art, water light, and the future. Lisa, SOHO, rising like a crystal vortex in the sky. Lisa Soho carries the late signature of Zaha Hadid with curves that seem to escape gravity. On the 13th, 24th, 35th, and 45th floors, glass bridges connect the two tower halves, making anyone crossing them feel suspended above a deep canyon of light. The double glass skin around the tower blocks much of the sun's heat, while still letting about 70% of natural light pour inside. In fact, the building is made of two separate tower parts that twist 45 degrees as they rise, then sit inside one giant glass shell. When night falls, the twisted core glows like a giant energy column, turning Lisa Soho into a mesmerizing symbol of the future. Sheraton Huzhou. Like a giant silver horseshoe rising beside the water, Sheraton Huzhou stands about 333 feet tall, with 27 floors, completely breaking the familiar image of a box-shaped hotel. To create this bold structure, about 1.5 billion US dollars was spent, making it one of the most luxurious and expensive hotels ever built. Although the two ends of the horseshoe seem separate above the lake, they are actually connected by a two-level underground tunnel beneath the water. When the lake is calm, the reflection joins with the real building to form a perfect number 8, suggesting luck, eternity, and prosperity. Its shape was inspired by ancient stone bridges reflected in water and the soft feeling of traditional ink paintings. When night falls, more than 19,000 LED lights make the whole outer shell glow, turning the hotel into a giant light show on the lake. Gansu Wind Farm, China. Stretching like a steel army across the Gobi Desert, Gansu Wind Farm turns dry land into a giant field of clean energy. Between ancient yellow sand and bright white turbines, the scene creates a powerful contrast, especially at sunset, when long steel shadows stretch across the ground. Each tower rises like a 30-story building, with blades over 164 feet long spinning in the sky like giant steel flowers. Known as the Great Wall of Wind, this mega project has a capacity of about 20,000 megawatts, enough to power an entire nation. Beyond making electricity, the project also faces the challenge of long-distance transmission, because this huge energy source stands in a desert far from major cities. From land that once seemed dead, it has become a goldmine of clean energy and a symbol of the push into a new energy era. Yangshan Automated Port. In the middle of the ocean, Yangshan Automated Port works like a high-tech ghost city where robots almost replace people to control the flow of global trade. Millions of containers are arranged in straight lines, forming a giant, colourful maze that looks from above like an electronic circuit board in the sea. Dozens of bright red cranes rise above the docks, rhythmically unloading containers from giant ships like huge machine arms. This meg gang was created by flattening offshore mountain peaks, leaving natural rock walls standing beside modern concrete docks. In the automated area, the port can handle more than 4 million 20-foot containers each year, a number almost impossible to imagine with human labour alone. When night falls, high-pressure lights turn the whole port into a glowing zone in the Black Sea, looking like an alien space station. China, Zun. Among the glass towers of Beijing, China Zun rises about 1,732 feet high, like a giant ancient vessel pulled straight into the clouds, changing the whole feeling of the skyline around it. The most surprising part is that its top spreads about 82 feet wider than its narrowest waist, making it look like a giant crown floating in the air. To keep a structure weighing about 386,000 tonnes from breaking, when the ground shakes, the tower uses a huge concrete core in the middle, together with strong steel columns around it so it can stay both firm and flexible. The whole project cost about 3.5 billion US dollars, and its shape comes from an old wine vessel with a wide base, a narrow middle, and a top that opens out again. But that narrow waist is not only for beauty, because the curve helps the tower cut about 20% of the wind force as it rises so high into the sky. Even more astonishing, it is also the only super tall building above 1,640 feet, standing in an area with intensity 8 earthquake risk. Tianzi Hotel. Draping itself in the mesmerising veil of three majestic Eastern deities, this bizarre accommodation machine is a masterpiece that cleverly deceives all eyes. Pilgrims come here not caring for worldly luxuries, only embracing the desire to fall asleep inside the gods to receive absolute prosperity. The most spectacular highlight of the structure is a luxurious retreat completely hidden inside a holy peach floating amidst the clouds. For this 136-foot tall sculpture to proudly defy all aerodynamic laws and hurricanes, a great foundation system was deeply rooted into the earth. The journey crossing the mortal boundary is also full of mystery, as the only guiding door lies humbly under the right heel of the holy figure. Despite proudly wearing the Guinness World Record crown, this surreal structure remains a stubborn low note, challenging all aesthetic standards of humanity. Gate of the Orient. Like a curving stroke breaking the rigidity of countless concrete boxes around this tower, is a globally shocking architectural phenomenon. Although bearing a majestic arch design, netizens humorously called it the Giant Long Johns, inadvertently turning the structure into an immortal cultural icon. When the lake is calm, this great structure casts a shadow on the water, forming a beautiful number 8, carrying a profound meaning of infinity and peace. The giant empty space in the middle is not just for beauty, but also a perfect aerodynamic pressure relief valve, helping the entire building stand firm against hurricane winds. To secure this machine, people had to use up to 132,277 short tons of load bearing steel mass, more than enough to cast 16 Eiffel Towers. Overcoming all satire, this gate is a powerful declaration of being ready to integrate with the world while never losing its cultural roots. Dunhuang Molten Salt Solar Plant. Looking like a space station landing in the arid desert, this superpower plant is a great real-life science fiction masterpiece. Every dawn, a sparkling ocean appears as 12,000 giant mirrors move rhythmically in unison to catch the first rays of sunlight. Covering an area of 346 acres, this mirror network weaves together to form a giant silver sunflower glowing against the sand. Reigning in the centre is an 853-foot tall tower, acting as a blindingly bright second sun when gathering tens of thousands of light beams. The invisible heat in the air surrounding the top of the tower is so extreme that it instantly burns up any bird that accidentally flies by. This dune-like scenery carries a strong message. Humanity can completely use the power of nature to generate electricity continuously day and night. Shanghai Tower, looking like a legendary glass creature, twisting and shooting straight into the clouds, this superstructure is the peak of future architecture. When night falls, all 128 floors instantly transform into a giant multicoloured pillar of light illuminating a vast space. Hidden inside the core is an aerodynamic elevator system that can shoot visitors to the top at a wind-tearing speed reaching 46 miles per hour. To fight against hurricanes, a 1,102 short-ton magnetic weight is suspended high up, shaped like a magical mechanical eye. The hollow double glass skin system wraps the building like a great insulating jacket, cutting down millions of kilowatts of cooling electricity annually. Going far beyond a lifeless skyscraper, this spectacular machine is actually a highly vibrant vertical city that produces its own energy. Coyote and Men Bridge, serving as the heart of a complex traffic network. This super arch bridge is a proud masterpiece of modern engineering. When night falls, the lighting system instantly turns the steel frame into a gorgeous, fiery crown floating on the dark river. Even during the day, the dark red paint of the structure shines with authority like a giant silk ribbon tearing through the grey fog. Crossing the fierce water with an arch span of 1,811 feet, this great structure proudly stands without using any pillars in the middle of the stream. This machine consumed up to 50,706 short tons of high-strength steel, a massive weight equivalent to melting down 6 Eiffel Towers to cast. The experience of hearing the train roaring through its metal chest will definitely bring a breathtaking feeling, just like a science fiction movie.